Thank you for coming, everyone. So my name is Emily Perry, and I am the Associate Director of Professional Development and Networking for Penn Engineering. Today, I'm going to talk about the job search for MCIT Online students. I am recording this session, so we're going to upload it afterwards. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask along the way. I am going to sort of get through the presentation. I've timed it about twice, and it ends up being about 25 minutes. So I'm going to be getting through the presentation, and then if you have any questions, just chat in the chat box, and at the end, I'll go through and answer those. So yeah, let's get started. So here's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to discuss your job search timeline, some relevant job search statistics, branding the MCIT Online degree to recruiters and employers, some networking, interview, and job search tools. So this is a really high-level overview of everything you might need to know about the job search. One thing to keep in mind is your job search is very subjective to your particular story. So just know that if you ever want to chat about your search or any particulars, you can always reach out to me and I can hear a little bit about your background. But today is really just talking about some tools that I think you'll find helpful. So to begin, I sort of put together this image to help everyone recognize some recruiting timelines I'm sure you're familiar with. If you went to your undergrad in the US, I'm sure this is familiar for a lot of people in the engineering background, business background, and tech as well. Overall, you just see employers on campus doing recruiting heavily in the fall, and then there's sort of another upsurge at the beginning of the spring. Overall, summer hiring is just a little bit more quiet because it's hard to get folks together who are on vacation. So not only is it hard to get your candidates in the room, to put together a hiring committee can sometimes be tricky too. So people are filling roles all throughout the year, but summer is just a little bit quieter. I show this image as something that's familiar, but I want everyone to start thinking about their search a little bit differently. Here is how I think about it for our MCIT Online students. It's really important that you start to think about your search in terms of your steps towards completing your degree, because depending on how many classes you're taking, which classes you're taking, and sort of the pace that you're planning, your job search sort of begins there. So I like you to think about it beginning, middle, and end of your degree. So at the beginning, I really want everyone to be open and curious. There's so much in the world of computer science and technology that it can feel overwhelming, but I want everyone to be sort of excited, curious. One of the best things that you can do is begin to review live job postings and start to sort of do some reflection within yourself and ask yourself, what trends am I seeing of things that interest me in terms of job types, in terms of job title, companies? Or is there anyone who I've read about that's doing really cool things that I'm interested in? Being open at the beginning is the best thing that you can do. Then, as you progress through the courses and you sort of hit the middle of your program, this is where you want to sort of start to narrow down your job search. The first step that you can do that's easy and fun, in my opinion, is update your resume. You have begun to build new technical skills and you've begun to work on projects that now is really going to change the story that you're telling employers. So midway through the program, you can start to think of ways that you can shape your new experiences. Then towards the end, we get a little bit more serious and we want to start to create a target company list. We really want your resume and any other application documents to be polished. We're talking technical interview practice, doing salary research, really doing all the things that are essential in your job search. Overall though, for many of you, recruiting season is now year-round. Like I said, it's a little bit quieter in the summer, but you're looking for these niche jobs and you all have such unique backgrounds that it really is thinking about timelines as more of a beginning, middle, and end, if that makes sense to everyone. I put together some of these job search statistics because I have a ton of people ask me two questions. A, when should I hear back? When you're in the job search, you're always on the edge of your seat. When am I going to hear back from someone about that next step? When am I going to hear back about that interview? I've done 3 rounds. When is it over? And then there's also the question of, am I doing enough? So if you really are doing a full-time job search, It is a lot to undertake, and it's many hours of commitment. So it's asking, how much time should I be committing to this? These are just some averages I found to be interesting. So job seekers will spend an average of 11 hours a week looking for work. So if you're someone who logs in on a Saturday and spends 3 hours putting together maybe 5 applications, that might not be enough. You might have to increase that a little bit if you really are doing a full throttle search. The average time to hire for a new employee was 39 days. I was really surprised by the statistic, mainly because I have seen up to 60 or 90 days for people from start to finish. That can really depend on the company size. So if you have a smaller size company, they have like a less of a huge HR department, or if you have an internal referral, sometimes that can speed up the process. But if you really are going in cold and the company is a little bit larger, they can be sort of a longer time to hire, something to just keep in mind. So where do our hired employees come from? It's good to see that company career sites are #1, mainly because I spend a lot of time telling people to go to the company website. If you know you want to work for a company, the first place you should start is checking their internal careers website. Job boards like Google for Jobs, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, those are always good go-to places. Obviously, referrals are a great way to get an in at a company. It's sort of a win-win for many folks who get that referral bonus if the person they refer gets hired. And then there's internal hires as well. And then it's interesting to see that agencies are so low. If you haven't done a job search in a while, you might be surprised to see that statistic. Overall, the internet has just made so many opportunities for people to apply and connect. The agencies really are dropping off in popularity. And then we have that last statistic there as well, that 5 interviews per offer is really that conversion rate for that statistic. Something to just keep in mind. So I think this is possibly the most valuable part of this webinar, and that is, how do you brand your MCIT Online degree to employers and to recruiters and folks that you're going to be connecting with? I have 2 models. This is sort of the first one that I developed. I read a really good article on HackerRank about the top 5 skills for new grad developers. So #1 and #5, problem solving and communication. Those are things that many of you already possess, right? You could develop that through your program now, through your undergraduate program, through years of experience, through activities, extracurricular activities, volunteerism. There's so many different ways that you can showcase those skills. And then items 2, 3, and 4, those are all things that you're working on in this degree. These are the more technical aspects of what people are looking for in developers that you are working hard to develop in your curriculum. Then there's sort of the next layer. So I call this the MCIT Online Student Profile. For many of you who are doing this program after having worked for a while, so you might be working full-time, you have a family, and you're also starting something completely new. This showcases these types of characteristics that are overall immeasurable for employers. Recruiters are trying to figure these parts of people out by asking you different behavioral questions, but you can make this the forefront of your pitch about talking about yourself by sort of telling your story of going back to this program and trying to learn something completely new. It's something that is immeasurable but invaluable to recruiters, and you want to put that in the forefront of your brand. And then finally, there's all of your past experiences. So any past technical expertise that you've had, leadership, supervision, creativity, everything that you've done as a professional is still relevant. And we really want that to come into play with your story as well. I made another model that sort of takes these steps. They're very similar, but I break it down even further into more sort of tangible components. So we have component 1. These are your immeasurable characteristics. So initiative, grit, resilience. These are all things that you need in order to be successful in this program. Then you have your transferable skills. This is everything that you already have as a part of your professional repertoire. Then you have your new technical skills that you're gaining. So these are all the things that you're learning in your curriculum, all the things that you're teaching yourself, all the things that you're doing with side projects and things of that nature, anything that you're doing at your job right now. But what are the actual technical building blocks that you need for your program? All of these sort of make up your personal professional profile. And then what you do with every layer here is you begin to think about, all right, how do I apply my personal professional profile to an employer profile needs assessment? What that is what specific pain points is this company or employer experiencing, and how am I positioned to address them? You take items from column 1, 2, and 3, and you answer that question. Now, I know a lot of you are probably saying, okay, but how do I figure out what an employer needs? And I sort of talk about that here. So you'll hear from anyone in career services that it is essential to do company research and understand your employer. You can do that by going on their website and doing a close reading of the words that they use, the verbiage that they use, see how they describe themselves on LinkedIn, but then also looking at other things like current events. A lot of times companies will have corporate blogs where they talk about things that are impactful to them, any major headlines, and then looking at other tech blogs like TechCrunch and CNET. And then obviously combing their company website with a fine-tooth comb to pull out anything that you find relevant. The second way is connecting with people. I'm going to talk a little bit about networking in my next few slides, but if you can connect with someone in the know, whether that be someone at the company that you're trying to apply for or someone in the same industry, you want to have really direct conversations with folks and ask them very pointed questions. Whenever I talk to recruiters, they always say the best candidates are the people who can sort of identify their pain points and very clearly talk about how they can solve them. So I put together some 3 questions you might want to ask someone if you're in that scenario. So what pain points are a major focus for your team? How do you measure success for the person entering this role? I like to try and use language that positions you in that role for the employer. So you're asking, how would you measure success for someone? And then they're really thinking deeper about the role they're hiring for and problems that could possibly be solved. Then you just take that as a valuable nugget of information that you work into any interview you could possibly having with that company in the future. I put together a sample pitch here. So this is how you can really take all those components that I mentioned earlier and put it into this conversation. So elevator pitch is sort of a term that we use for if you find yourself with an employer and you have a chance to talk to them. This could be at a networking event. This could be just by happenstance, you meet someone who's working at a company you find interesting. This could be just when someone asked you in an initial interview, tell me about yourself. And there's sort of 4 parts to this. So obviously in this sample I have, my name is Emily Perry and I've been working in corporate financial consulting for 7 years. Here we're telling about their past. So you're sort of putting yourself and pivoting yourself in this situation where someone understands, okay, I understand everything that you've done so far. That second 2 sentences are also sort of past focused. So here's what inspired me to do this program, and here's what I had been working on, and that sort of piqued my interest. Then that third point, through this program, I've learned valuable technical skills such as Java and C++. This is how we're moving forward, and we are saying, hey, these are the things that I want to do in the future. And then finally, we're using really good future forward language in this last part, saying I've been working and mastering a new skill set for the past 3 years. Whenever you're ending a pitch with someone, you really want to make sure that you use that future forward language. It's sort of a way to brainwash people, but it's effective. And it showcases enthusiasm and sort of a commitment to your cause. So when I say networking, one of the best things that you can do is get involved in projects to not only build your skill set, but also connect with people with like-minded interests, connect with people who, really might be vibing with you on the same wavelength in terms of professionalism. So obviously you have to work on projects in your courses. So connecting with peers through the curriculum is really helpful. Doing open source, GitHub, industry competitions, hackathons. I know that our student organization, MOSA, is committed to trying to bring these types of things to everyone's attention, and that's great. Passion projects in general are so valuable to put on a resume, mainly because it showcases curiosity and enthusiasm for this type of work that people want to hire you if you can reflect that type of just intense interest in a topic. It also showcases all those things I have listed there. So initiative, curiosity, time management, collaboration, leadership. It is something that you want to be mindful of. Like I had said, many of you are working full time, you have families, you are doing this program. Putting a bunch of projects together might not be the best thing for you to do, but figuring out a way to mindfully work this into your plan of study, think about how I want to partner, what I want to do, I think can only help you in the long run. Then the next sort of part of this whole thing is networking and identifying connections. So at the core of this image, you have the folks you know, so your personal connections and your peers, the warmest, easiest people to reach out to. I put some of our Slack channels there after our virtual networking session last week. Someone who created an entrepreneurship Slack channel. That it just seems like a great opportunity to connect with people who are like-minded. So use the folks you know. Then there's your second layer here of connections of connections. Alumni are a great piece of the puzzle because people, A, love to give back, and B, are flattered when you reach out. So if you can flatter someone and say, hi, we have this connection and I want to hear about your life, they're always like, oh, that's great, and I'd love to connect. There's sort of this very nice, warm, fuzzy connection that can happen there. Similarly, if you have someone in common, they'll be like, oh, I love Greg. Yes, I would love to talk to you because I love Greg, if that makes sense. And then finally, we have sort of the most outer layer, which is recruiters and new contacts. So people that you don't know, trying to connect with folks that you have never chatted with. This is something that I'm personally trying to increase for all of you, those recruiter connections, figuring out how I can make inroads to new contacts for everyone. Conferences, networking events, meetups, these are all great ways to connect with people. But you want to have your story prepared before you are connecting with these people you've never talked to. So having an idea about what you want to talk about when you know there's something coming up is very helpful. I put together this sample of a cold outreach just because I know some people really love a template to work off of, or they find learning through samples really helpful. Really what you need to know are sort of those 4 components on the right. So whenever you're reaching out to someone you've never talked to before, you want to introduce yourself, make it clear who you are. If you do have a common connection, make that clear. So if you are from the same college, if you did a similar program, if you know someone in common, you want to state that, obviously. The hardest part for folks, where I think a lot of people might stumble, is making it clear why you want to talk to that person specifically. So you can't say things like, you work at Facebook, I want to work at Facebook. Right, like a lot of people want that. You need to figure out something that's a little bit more unique to the person you're reaching out to. You want to read their LinkedIn profiles completely. If they have ever published something, you want to read that. If they have a personal webpage where they update things or projects that they share on GitHub, you want to be able to talk a little bit more specifically about those things. And sometimes that can be a warmer connection point that will get you a better response. And then finally, you want to have a clear call to action. So here I say, if we could find a half hour to connect over the phone, I would appreciate hearing more details about your career journey. This way the person understands, all right, this person wants to talk to me about this and they want to do it over the phone. This makes their response easier to you because A, they know what you're asking about, and B, they know how you want to connect. Here I mention a little bit about interviews, mainly because it's something that will be on everyone's mind as you are beginning to make this transition into a job search. There are 2 types of interviews you want to be aware of, behavioral and then the technical. So I have listed Glassdoor as a potential resource, mainly because whenever folks have the option to record interview questions that they have been asked, and you can search that by company and by job type. Interview Stream is a subscription service that the University of Pennsylvania subscribes to. What that is a tool where you can record yourself answering interview questions. You can actually create a custom interview, record yourself with a webcam, and then watch yourself back. That's really helpful for understanding any quirks you might have, like saying or like too much, making bad eye contact, things like that nature. Obviously, the world is becoming a little bit more virtual, so seeing how you come off in that virtual space can be really helpful. Then the place where most of our students practice technical interviewing is using LeetCode and HackerRank sample questions. We do have peer-to-peer technical interviewing practice that goes on. That's shared on Slack, and what happens is students will get together, they will have a practice question, they'll work through it with each other and then give each other feedback on how it went and how they presented their answer. The tricky thing about technical interviews is it's not just how you're solving the problem and if you get it right, but how you're thinking about the problem, how you're walking someone through your problem solving, unpacking biases that you might have as you're working through an issue. There's just a lot more to it. So whenever we can get the opportunity to provide that more technical practice, we definitely will. I just do know that students will get together and do peer-to-peer routinely. But that's something we want to be able to deliver to you for sure. Here I have a list of online job search tools that are sort of just my favorites. Obviously, going to the company career websites is helpful. I list Handshake here because employers who post to Penn's Handshake are basically, they're looking for Penn students. So it narrows down the field of who else could be competing for that job because the employer posted this job in particular knowing that Penn students would see it. I went on Handshake and I actually have some statistics. So yesterday I filtered jobs by MCIT, by Masters in Computer and Information Technology students. Right now there are 1,894 jobs with that filter. Some sample companies were Hopper, Waymo, and Twilio. There are 808 jobs that have the filter of authorization optional. So if you're an international student, there are some jobs there as well. And then there are 928 internships. Some companies of note were eBay, Epic Games, and Wayfair. There's a lot to sift through on Handshake, if I'm being honest, but I do know that many of our students have found internships through that option, and there are companies who are posting. And like I said earlier, because it is Penn specific, it's definitely worth checking out. Then we have my favorite job search websites, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Google for Jobs. Dice, Stack Overflow, GitHub, and iCrunchData are all good tech-specific job boards. And there's Angel.co for startups and Product Hunt for startups. Overall, I recommend using different sites because job search fatigue is so true. And it's really frustrating to go onto a website, type something in, use your regular keywords, and keep it seeing the same things come up over and over again. Sometimes if you change the sites you're using, it can sort of battle that fatigue and seeing the same things pop up for you. I began to gather some things for international students in your international job search, but I am looking for feedback. So let me touch on the first two first. Whenever a student graduates from Penn, the Career Services Department does some surveying of students to find out where they go, what are their outcomes. This is called a first destination survey. They will ask international students if they got hired in the US, and then they compile a list of the companies who have hired those students. Glowing Google is another service that UPenn subscribes to. And what this does is it pulls information from the Department of Labor Statistics and lists companies who have sponsored H-1B visas and what years they sponsored them. So those two things are really helpful for students who want a list of companies who in the past have hired H-1B. So then I put those next two resources, talent.io and eurojobs.com for jobs in Europe. And then the next 5 resources, recruit.net, chinahr.com, JobStreet, Nakuri, Gauge and Pot. All of those I had found by cross-referencing different articles about doing a job search in Asia. If anyone has had experience doing a search and has had luck on any websites that I haven't listed here, please reach out because it's something that I'm hoping to continue to research, and I would love to vet through actual student experiences. So finally, it's really important that you stay organized in your search. The very worst thing that can happen is you submitted 40 applications and all of a sudden someone calls and says, hey, I want to talk to you about that job you applied for with us. And you're on the phone just saying, who are you and what are you? Because I've applied to 40 jobs and I'm not sure where we are right now. The more notes you can take when you're applying to jobs, the better. Something that I think is really important is you want to record position highlights of jobs that you're really excited about, mainly because sometimes you could submit an application and then you'll get a call back about it, and then the job isn't posted anywhere. They've actually taken the posting down. That's usually the worst feeling, because you really do want to target your interview answers to the job and the qualifications. So keeping any position highlights is just one of my best tips if you want to go in prepared for an interview. All right, so that concludes my time talking. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open my chat to review questions. All right, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and type them up in the chat, or you can ask them. Wow, I did such a good job.
Emily, I had one comment, which was we were talking about side projects, and I was going to say that maybe this summer could be a good time for people to do side projects because it's an optional semester.
Yeah.
So students can, not sign up for anything in the summer, and then you don't have to go on a leave of absence or anything.
For sure.
So that could be a time when you're not trying to balance work and school and a project.
Yeah, very good advice. Okay, is it that we cannot join the on-campus job fair? So as of now, MCIT Online students cannot go to the on-campus job fairs. It's really an issue of the Central Career Services are the folks who organize and deliver those job fairs. And they're already sort of at capacity and at times over capacity for people showing up. So we haven't been able to get our students access. However, it's something that I really want to work hard to deliver something even better for everyone. So doing virtual career fairs, having employers come and do virtual info sessions, really trying to be the bridge of employers who would be interested in the MCIT Online student profile and connecting you with all of them. What's the best approach for MCIT students looking for internships? So Joe, there's actually a really good webinar that Angela Wen had put together with me talking about her internship search and how she went about it. She gets really specific. Overall, a question that I get a lot is, should I do an internship? What are the pros and cons? So the pro is all the obvious reasons. It's great to have the practical experience. It's great to get certain company names on your resume. They offer the ability to grow and expand your technical expertise, things like that. But the cons are also a lot of cons for many people. So if you have a full-time job with benefits, quitting that job and doing an internship could be impossible for you. So it really depends on you and your role. If you know you want to do an internship search, I recommend watching that webinar, but it's a lot of the same steps. So polishing and updating your resume, beginning the search using many of the same job search resources, but just using the internship tab on those things and figuring out your timeline from there. Are there companies that have recruiting partnerships with Penn? I know there are postings on Handshake, but is that the only way we should find employers that recruit through Penn? So any job posting on Handshake, you can assume that that company has some sort of relationship with Penn, but you can't really gauge who our top tier, like very warm companies are versus a random company who just knows they want good skills in a certain area. The good thing about Penn is that we are highly sought after. It's a competitive school, our programs are competitive, so really every employer wants a piece of us in some way. So it's just figuring out which companies are, I would say that instead of saying which companies have a relationship with UPenn, it's which company do I want to work for, because the competition of UPenn means that you are highly sought after. I got a message from employers on Handshake to join a company-specific recruiting events. Are we allowed to go to these, or is that only for on-campus only? Can companies see whether the student is in MCIT Online or on campus? That's a good question. I don't think that on Handshake you are designated as an online student. I would say that if you got a direct invitation from an employer saying, hi, please come to our event, that would mean that you should go to that event. If you can bring an invitation to there and that employer reached out, I would say that. If you're not in the area, obviously I think that what you should do and what the responsible thing to do would be is to respond and say, hey, I'm actually not in the area, but I would still love to connect. Is there any way that we could set something up? Honestly, that could probably give you an edge. Even if they'll do a 20-minute Zoom with you, that's you one-on-one with the employer instead of being in a room watching a PowerPoint and trying to jockey for questions at the end. How do we get to or log into Handshake? I got one too, and it's at Penn campus. So everyone who's getting invitations from Handshake from recruiters saying, hey, come to this event, I'm pretty sure what they're doing is they're filtering by major. So they're filtering you by MCIT Online, and they're saying, hey, come to this. So I would reach out to the employer and say, hey, I would love to come. Just so you know, I'm an online student, but it would be great to connect. If you can't come physically, try and set something up online. How do we get to or log into Handshake? If you go on the Penn Career Services, it's there. And then there is the link from Olivia. Thank you. Other questions or thoughts?
Just a sidebar, the Handshake link is also in the onboarding course, and it's on our our public website as well.
Great. Like I had said before, job search is very subjective. So I hope that I sort of gave everyone a good overview or things to think about or a framework for thinking about your search. But do not hesitate to reach out to me, and we could talk a little bit more specifically about your journey and the things that you want. Just waiting for any last questions. Thanks for your answer on Employers Relations Penn. I know at Michigan State University, Target is super interested in recruiting from MSU. Is there anything like that at Penn? Not that I can think, not that I know of. So some career centers will have an employer advisory board. That is where they basically have employers who they'll meet with quarterly, biannually, or annually to ask their opinions on different things. I can find out from our central career services if they have anything like that. And Chloe, I can reach out. I'll reconnect with you on that. Ideally, I'm going to make us all a fancy MCIT Online employer favorite group, mainly because our students and our profile is so unique and I think very valuable to a lot of employers that I hope to sort of create that bridge for everyone. Have I seen any part-time internship opportunities for MCIT Online students, or do students tend to quit their existing jobs to make room for full-time internships? So I haven't heard too many students doing part-time internships. I think that what they'll end up doing is doing like a remote internship where maybe they only need like 12 hours a week of work. They can do it that way, but I don't know really. I think that if you're quitting your job, then you should be ideally looking for a full-time internship. So if you're prepared to quit your job, you're going to want to look for more of that full-time substantial internship role instead of part-time. Can we book a phone call with you to go over our specific situation? Joe, if you send me an email, I could send you a link to my appointment booking opportunities and you can get on my calendar. And usually I just do Zooms, but if you prefer a phone call, we can do that as well. I'm actually going to type my email in here for everyone.
Besides resumes and GitHub, are there other sort of tangible things you need to prepare for employers?
So I would say in order of preparation, this is what you want to do. Have your resume ready. If your employer requires a cover letter, that's equally and sometimes even more so important in terms of effort and putting in a good position for yourself in terms of storytelling. And then all of your interview prep. So behavioral and technical. I think that those are sort of the most tangible things that you could be working on when planning on connecting with an employer and doing the search.
I see. Thanks.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So at what point in the MCIT program do you think it's best to start doing an internship? Like, for example, like, do you think that we have to take like some courses in order for us to be able to do an internship?
Yeah. That's a hard question because it's also subjective depending on what your technical background is before this. So for most internships, you're going to have to be well versed in a coding language. So being able to know Java. Some students will be like halfway through a course and then do a ton of leak code practice and then go into a technical interview and do fine. Other students feel the need to take a little bit longer in their classes and do even more prep and then feel more confident. It sort of depends on your technical background and prowess and comfort. So I wish I could say, oh, you should take 591, 92, 93 and apply, but I can't. It's a little bit too subjective.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I can jump in and give some perspective also. So what I know that what I've heard program directors say about the on-campus program is that many students will apply after taking 594. So that's kind of like the part 2 of Java. And I think that would be kind of like the compromise time to do it. I do know of one student that applied after just taking one course and was accepted, but again, I don't know what his specific background was. So I think that was a little bit probably unusual, and taking it after 594 is, I think, a lot more common. I think there's people who also feel that 596 would be really important too. So I mean, you could wait until after you've taken all of your core courses. But if you didn't want to wait, again, you could go somewhere in the middle.
Where will this recording to this webinar be posted? We have an MCIT Online playlist, but Olivia, I don't actually know the answer to this. Where do people find that? I have my own like personal link that I just go to whenever I want to check on things.
Yeah, I'll post the link here, and we post it in Slack pretty often, but the main home for it is in the onboarding course. On the left-hand side, there's a resources tab, and that's where you can find a lot of program level resources. So this is kind of like, this particular webinar is not related to a specific course, right? Your course stuff would be grouped in the courses themselves, but anything program related is linked from the onboarding course. So there's a link to our YouTube playlist. There's a link to the Google Calendar that's for the program. There's a link to the advising sessions that my student affairs team offers each week for the program. So that's kind of the place for things that you might want to bookmark, useful items. And I'll paste it now here too.
Any other final questions from anyone? All right. Well, I'm going to slowly say goodbye in case any come through on the chat. But I really appreciate everyone logging in today. I hope you learned something or you found a new resource that you want to consider. And I'm looking forward to connecting with everyone to hear a little bit about your own journey and see what ways I can support along the way. Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to end the meeting. Goodbye, everyone.